There's a line from the 1987 movie RoboCop that's always stuck with me. When Officer Lewis confronts RoboCop for the first time, she says,
"Murphy, it's you."
And then he says,
"Excuse me, I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening."
Everyone remembers Lewis's line, "Murphy, it's you." It's an iconic moment in the film that highlights RoboCop's awareness of his former humanity, an awakening of sorts. But it's what RoboCop says after that really catches my interest.
I have to go.
I have to go. Somewhere there's a crime happening. When Lewin speaks her line, she's looking straight into the camera. The audience enters RoboCop's point of view, scan lines and everything. It's an unusual camera angle in a movie, one that stands out. It's intimate, it's uncomfortable even. Lewis's big mug is right there staring you in the face. Imagine seeing that on a big screen.
"Murphy, it's you."
And then we break into a more conventional shot, over the shoulder, like you would shoot any dialogue scene in a movie, just as RoboCop leaves and says somewhere there is a crime happening. Now things are back to normal. He's a cop again, going just about his regular job. On top of that, the line is spoken kind of softly. It's almost like he doesn't really believe what he's saying. It's weird. It's a strange thing to say after experiencing his pivotal reawakening of sorts. He just rediscovered his humanity, or rather he's confronted with his humanity by his closest ally, Lewis. It's so mundane to just go back to normal, just like that. Let's explore that a little further. One thing that makes RoboCop such a memorable movie is that it flawlessly embodies the era that produced it, the 1980s. It has everything you want from an 80s movie. Over-the-top action sequences, corny jokes, cocaine, insane hairstyles, crazy fashion choices, cocaine, weird nightclub dancing, unfettered capitalism. Did I mention cocaine? Science fiction is often as much about the setting as it is about the narrative, with one usually reinforcing the other. RoboCop takes place in a near-future version of Detroit, but a future that has one foot firmly planted in the 1980s, politically, socially, and even aesthetically to a certain degree. It is the extreme logical conclusion of what the filmmakers saw as the predominant politics of their time: increased corporate power, war and nuclear proliferation, the erosion of public services, privatization, individualism, the war on crime, essentially Reaganism. I think it's fair to say that we can describe RoboCop's version of Detroit as a neoliberal hellscape where crime and corporate greed fuse in some sort of cancerous mass that slowly devours the city. They Live by John Carpenter does a similar thing, and it's even more, over the top and more extreme. These were filmmakers, around the time that looked around them and kept wondering, what the hell is going on? We are completely eviscerating all our social safety nets, and nobody seems to bat an eye. It's hard to fathom today how popular Reagan was in his day and how many people didn't really see the damage until it was too late. Although to blame everything on Reagan is perhaps a bit too simple of an answer to a rather complex situation, but let's not get into that right now. The point is that contemporary critiques like that in RoboCop and They Live were the exception rather than the rule.
"Excuse me, I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening."
But I'm sure you've heard this before. Everybody and their mothers have talked about the politics of RoboCop, and I don't really want to retread that same territory. Instead, being the science fiction nerd that I am, I want to focus on RoboCop, specifically the robo part of RoboCop, the technology of it all. First, a quick recap of the story.
You give us 3 minutes, and we'll give you the world.
Before he became an awesome cyborg, RoboCop was this useless flashback named Murphy, who was murdered in the line of duty by TV's coolest dad, Clarence Boddicker, and his sadistic group of thugs. OCP, the corporation that pretty much owns Detroit, uses what's left of Murphy's body for a new prototype law enforcement machine that will eventually replace every cop in the country. The result is RoboCop, a robot who is also a cop. So RoboCop. You get it, right? Pretty clever.
There's a new guy in town. His name's RoboCop.
RoboCop lives up to his expectations as the perfect police officer, following the 3 directives of police procedure. I'm not sure if shooting guys in the dick is part of that, but otherwise he does a pretty good job. Unfortunately, he's not the docile little machine that OCP expects him to be. Murphy is still somewhere in there in some form, and the memories of his former life, his brutal murder, begin to haunt RoboCop.
I can feel him. can't remember them.
The plot of RoboCop is yet another take on the Frankenstein story, something that is fairly common in science fiction robot stories, as I've mentioned in another video. RoboCop is an artificial creation that eventually comes back to bite his creators in the ass. He's Frankencop. Only in this case, the creation is the one that we root for, and the creator is an evil corporation that we root against. I guess it would be like if in Shelley's book, Dr. Frankenstein paid a bunch of thugs to murder people whose body parts he used to create the monster. I'm sure that was in an earlier draft. Of course, RoboCop's quest for vengeance is thwarted by the fact that he has a serial number. He can't arrest OCP Vice President Dick Jones because of a secret fourth directive that prevents him from acting against his manufacturers. As the film consistently reminds us, he is a product, their product.
You're our product. And we can't very well have our products turning against us, can we?
In the end, RoboCop does get his revenge. He kills Clarence Boddicker and his gang of thugs with the help of his partner Lewis, and even manages to exploit a quirky little loophole to kill Dick Jones, the vice president of the company. The film ends with the old man asking him what his name is, and in a bold rejection of his manufacturer identity, RoboCop becomes Murphy again.
Murphy.
And we even see him smile. I mean, as far as happy endings go, this is a tricky one. At the end of the movie, RoboCop is badly damaged, the entire police force is on strike, Lewis's fate is left uncertain, crime still remains rampant in Detroit, and OCP remains in power. No structural changes have taken place. RoboCop didn't really kill Dick Jones in a way OCP did when he was no longer useful to them or when he was a hindrance to them, and by the time the film ends, they still hold all the cards. It is at best a hollow victory.
Somewhere there is a crime happening.
Capitalism and technology have always been closely interlinked, and while there is an argument to be made for capitalism facilitating technological progress, there's no doubt that capitalism requires constant technological progress, from the Industrial Revolution to the modern AI revolution, or the AI bubble, whichever you prefer. German philosopher Martin Heidegger, the most frustrating of German philosophers, wrote a lot about technology. Well, he wrote about many things, most of which make no sense, but a couple ideas from his 1954 essay, The Question Concerning Technology, are relevant here. First, in his essay, Heidegger argues that the role of technology in our lives is neither as a means nor as an end, but as a way of revealing truth. This is somewhat of a complicated notion. The way I always understood it is, for example, if I craft a sword out of a block of iron, that reveals a lot about me as a craftsman, about the properties of the iron that make up the sword, the society that necessitates the sword to exist, my relationship to society as a blacksmith or whatever I would be in this scenario, the social and economic systems that again make this sword required and make it exist, etc., etc. It's almost a Platonic idea in the sense that there's something that exists as an essence, as a ideal thing that is revealed by this newly created piece of technology. However, in his essay, Heidegger makes the distinction between something as simple as a sword and modern technology, which utilizes advanced science and industrialization. Modern technology risks diminishing nature by turning it into a pure resource, in a sense perverting our relationship with it. I guess an obvious example would be seeing animals as just a resource to be farmed in large amounts rather than a life form that has its own dignity and even rights to a certain extent. For this, Heidegger invents the term standing reserve. I think that this type of perversion that Heidegger talks about describes the world of RoboCop to a T. In RoboCop, every room is filled with screens, everyone is hooked to the TV and pines for the new SUX 6000 car, which proudly gets very low gas mileage. A union strike is a business opportunity for OCP, and a construction project is just a way to sell drugs and prostitution. The first scene in the movie begins with a news segment, which opens with a line,
You give us 3 minutes, and we'll give you the world.
Even something that, at least on paper, is as sacred as journalism becomes just another product to be optimized and streamlined for the market. And actually, the subject of the first news story is Pretoria, South Africa, where, the white ruling class has somehow acquired nuclear weapons, presumably bought on the free market from a private company that sells them. Nuclear power is the ultimate standing reserve. It's the power of the atom which makes up everything, literally torn apart for the purpose of destruction. The next story is about Reagan's Star Wars initiative, which apparently has become a reality in this world and also ends up killing Reagan accidentally. They don't say that. They say a former president, but I think it's meant to be implied. It's meant to imply that that was Reagan. I figure the writers had a bit of fun with that. But anyway, technology is the primary means in this world by which OCP have established their supremacy in the political life of the city. They sell equipment to both the military and the police, and through those deals, they exert control over those institutions.
We practically are the military.
What concerns Heidegger in his essay is that the act of turning nature into a standing reserve will eventually turn on us, and we humans, we will also become the objects of this exploitation. And this is precisely what happens to the movie. This is what RoboCop represents, turning humanity into nothing more than a resource for technological consumption, i.e. a standing reserve. And you can even argue that the rest of the people of Detroit also exist in a similar relationship with technology that controls their lives. There are several parallels in the movie between Dick Jones and Clarence Boddicker. For example, at different points in the film, they both say the line, "Opportunity is where you find it."
I say good business is where you find it.
Good business is where you find it.
That is because their goals are fundamentally the same. Their goal is to exploit every aspect of life for profit to make the entire world a standing reserve. After all, the omni in omni-consumer products means everything. That said, Heidegger was not opposed to technology. For him, the solution was not to abandon technology, but that we change our relationship to it. Then the question becomes, just as OCP uses technology as a tool of oppression, can RoboCop use it as a tool for liberation?
I'd buy that for $1.
There's an excellent video by YouTuber Maggie Mae Fish analyzing RoboCop as a potential symbol for trans identity. While I don't 100% see it that way, the concept of RoboCop as a rebellion against norms, be it political, social, or even sexual, I think that is totally valid. In her seminal essay, The Cyborg Manifesto, Donna Haraway describes modern technology as the illegitimate offspring of militarism and patriarchal capitalism. But like any illegitimate child, it doesn't really owe any allegiance to its parents. The fusing of men and technology has the power to subvert existing power structures and to break barriers. This can include barriers of race, class, gender, sex, etc. Biologically speaking, when Murphy becomes RoboCop, he has no longer male genitalia, no sexual desire to speak of, and doesn't really have a memory of his life as a male member of the species. We can also presume that any kind of hormonal or neurological markers of masculinity have been eliminated from whatever is left of Murphy's organic remains. From this perspective, you could argue that masculinity is taken away from him.
I can feel them. I can't remember them.
In other ways, however, his masculinity is enhanced. Early in the film, we see that Murphy has a fascination with cowboys, and he tries to be one in real life, as shown not only by his mimicking of his son's TV hero, TJ Laser, but also by his general attitude and approach to police work.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
However, the moment he tries to pull that in real life, he meets with a brutal end. It turns out that dashing in gung-ho into a lair of maniac cop killers without backup is not such a good idea. Who would have thought?
You're doing better than Peter Weller from the opening scene of RoboCop.
As RoboCop, on the other hand, he's perfectly able to fulfill his hyper-masculine hotshot fantasy, and then some. Bullets just bounce off him and even explosions don't seem to do anything. He becomes a metallic cowboy. Would not be out of line to describe RoboCop as a kind of a Western. RoboCop represents a kind of rebirth for Murphy, and that allows him to redefine his life and break free of any restrictions that he may have had when he was just flesh and blood. This symbolism could not be any clearer, as at the moment of his rebirth, we are told that the only thing that RoboCop can eat is baby food.
Tastes like baby food.
Of course, this kind of rebirth has political implications. What initially attracted director Paul Verhoeven to the project was not so much the political messages. He was new to the US. I think a lot of that probably went over his head. But what he saw in RoboCop was a metaphor for Jesus. And if you know Paul Verhoeven, you know that he's been obsessed with Jesus his entire life. Not from a religious point of view, as far as I know, Verhoeven is an atheist. Instead, he's been obsessed with what is known as the historical Jesus. That is the historical person that may have existed at the time when Jesus was around, I guess. He even wrote a whole book about that. Both Murphy's death and his sort of resurrection as RoboCop mirror very closely that of Jesus, and in the process he becomes a new being. Rather than being loyal to the powers that created him, he challenges them and he's able to rebel against them in a way that he never could as Murphy. So If you accept this premise, then you may ask, is RoboCop's rebellion successful?
Somewhere there is a crime happening.
The answer is unfortunately not at all. Fundamentally, RoboCop is doomed to fail. Here's a very practical concern in RoboCop's existence. He is a multi-million-dollar machine that requires multi-million-dollar expertise and resources to maintain. The issue comes up explicitly in the second and third movies, but even the first movie sort of implies this. We see RoboCop receiving round-the-clock care and observations from scientists and equipment that, for now, only OCP can provide. When he gets damaged later in the movie, there's a limit to how much he can take care of himself. Eventually, he'll need OCP to fix him if he wants to continue living, or whatever it is that RoboCop does. I guess running, functioning, existing, close enough. This raises a crucial question in regard to his independence as a being with free will when his existence is so tied to this technology. Can RoboCop truly rebel against the system that created him? Notable political scientist Langdon has argued that all technology is inherently political, and it's a mistake to consider technology as a neutral tool. The political consequences of technology are inherent to its creation. In his most famous essay from 1980, Do Artifacts Have Politics?, he writes, "To our accustomed way of thinking, technologies are seen as neutral tools that can be used well or poorly, for good, evil, or something in between. We usually do not stop to inquire whether a given device might have been designed and built in such a way that it produces a set of consequences logically and temporally prior to any of its professed uses." Taking the most obvious example, the atom bomb is an inherently political artifact. As long as it exists at all, its lethal properties demand that it is controlled by a centralized, rigidly hierarchical chain of commands closed to all influences that might make its workings unpredictable. This is a fantastic essay that I recommend everyone read. I don't agree with every argument that Winner makes, and I think some of his examples are a little bit weak, and there have been many criticisms written about it since it was published. Nevertheless, I think the general case for an inherent link between technology and political power is very convincing. RoboCop is and remains a property of OCP, created to advance their political, social, and economic goals. We are reminded of this many times throughout the movie.
He doesn't have a name. He's got a program. He's product.
Regardless of whether or not there is a human mind under all those wires, that is a separate philosophical discussion, the technology is such that it becomes virtually impossible for anything other than the political goals of OCP to be carried forth. Not for Murphy or Lewis or the rest of the police force, or the poor people of Detroit. OCP is always in control, and it's extremely unlikely that they will lose control as long as that technology that they produce remains crucial to the operations of the city. The film's ambiguous ending only confirms this outlook. RoboCop's or Murphy's victory at the end is mostly superficial. Shooting a bunch of bad guys like a cowboy, while satisfying, does nothing to address the systemic issues of the city or the imbalances that keep OCP in power. As a cyborg, to use that term, RoboCop can do little more than just shoot bad guys, and is not even allowed to shoot the worst ones. Look at the three directives that RoboCop operates by: serve the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law. To me, these sound like a corporatized version of Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. I mean, they're pretty vague and kind of meaningless, resembling PR speak more than anything of substance. Sure, uphold the law is fairly clear, although problematic given the unjust laws designed to protect corporations like OCP more than regular citizens. But what does protect the innocent mean exactly? What does serve the public trust means? You might have some idea of what they mean, but mostly they're vague platitudes that they could be massaged to mean anything you want. Essentially, they're kind of pointless. On the other hand, there's absolutely no ambiguity about the hidden 4th directive. It's very clear, don't fuck with OCP. And it trumps all other directives. This is Winner's argument literally programmed into the technology. No matter what happens, RoboCop cannot truly harm OCP in any meaningful way. His rebellion is a hollow one. Perhaps he can avenge Murphy in some way, but not much more than that. We see this play out literally in the movie. RoboCop kills Dick Jones by exploiting some silly loophole, but the old man, the CEO of OCP, essentially the ringleader and the one who benefits the most from the profits of OCP, remains unharmed and unpunished. OCP remains unharmed and unpunished, and so does the system that it perpetrates. Things only get worse in the sequel, RoboCop 2, and actually they're even worse in the proposed sequel that was not produced, The Corporate Wars, which the original writers were in the process of writing before they got fired due to the writer's strike. That's certainly an irony. And this finally takes me back to the line that I've been obsessing over.
Excuse me. I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.
I think this is a line that perfectly embodies this idea. It represents RoboCop's programming, the inescapable connection that he has with the purpose that he was designed for, to serve OCP and the system that props them up. The moment that RoboCop discovers his humanity is interrupted by the prerogative of his role as a literal tool for the neoliberal order that created him, a machine that works for the police and in turn works for profit. A sad reminder of his permanent enslavement by technology at the precise moment where he wakes up to having a human consciousness. What happens immediately afterwards, RoboCop's confrontation with Emil that starts his path toward revenge, feels deliberate, although if we really think about it, it must be an accident. There's no way RoboCop knew that Emil would be there at that gas station. In that moment, he's just doing what he was programmed to do, a standard patrolling of the streets, and it's only serendipity that makes him stumble into Emil. It's another layer in the battle between Murphy and RoboCop, human free will and the corporatized machine of OCP. Murphy is able to get his revenge, but to reiterate once again, it is a hollow victory, a feel-good smokescreen to the larger, more systemic evil that remains unchallenged. Because there is no escape from this. The technology that makes RoboCop, that gives him the illusion of power, is also inherently designed to keep him in the metaphorical chains that further nothing but the goals of its creator. To quote Heidegger once more, only slightly out of context, everywhere we remain unfree and chained to technology, whether we passionately affirm it or deny it. Technology is political. Alright, that's it for this video on RoboCop. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. This time I decided to end the video with a few fun facts that I discovered about the movie as I was doing my research on it. So here you go, hope you enjoy. RoboCop was Paul Verhoeven's second Hollywood film. Before that, he made Flesh and Blood, also produced by Orion Pictures. Verhoeven was not entirely satisfied with the look of the RoboCop suit, and he was very specific about how he shot it. He particularly hated the way RoboCop's ass looked. He tried as much as possible to avoid shooting RoboCop from behind, which I don't quite understand. I've seen the ass in question. That is a fine-looking ass. The Judge Dredd comics were a huge inspiration for the writers of RoboCop. The cops in the movie are named after serial killers. In the scene where RoboCop confronts those two rapists, the way his shadow gets bigger is unrealistic. If he was walking toward them, the shadow would in fact get smaller. So to achieve that, they had RoboCop walk backwards towards the light to show his shadow getting bigger as sort of a metaphor for the imposing figure of RoboCop. During the shooting of RoboCop, Peter Weller caused a few problems because he kept having sex with all the female members of the crew. It was also generally pretty difficult to work with. The producers were unhappy with how many times Kirkwood Smith would add the word fuck to his lines. They asked him to stop that, but he refused. There's a deleted scene at the end of the movie where we find out that Louis actually survives. Okay, this is not a fact, just a personal opinion, but while we can all agree that the first movie is the superior one in the entire franchise, the second movie is actually way funnier. I think it's one thing that the sequel does get right.
Shit, he's fucked up.
Bad language makes for bad feeling.
And lastly, after decades of discussion and funding difficulties, a statue of RoboCop was finally built and installed in Detroit.
Stay out of trouble.